You're listening to Someday List, a podcast by To Do. Every month, we're sitting down with some of our favorite creatives, founders, and entrepreneurs to talk about what they're doing, how they got there, and what they want to tackle next. I'm your host, Evan Leon, and today I'm talking to Gabriella Pelko, a photographer, writer, adventure athlete, and environmentalist, just to name a few things, who's based in Valdez, Alaska. Gabby's work captures the breathtaking landscapes of the place she now calls home, and we talk about picking up odd jobs, working to live rather than living to work, finding a spiritual connection to your art, and following the call to adventure. Before we get started, if you're looking for an organization system you can actually keep up with, look no further. To Do is a thoughtfully constrained, minimalist to-do list app that is as simple as paper. Because we believe that simple stays organized. To Do is an easy way to do that so you can focus on what matters. Start your 30-day free trial at todo.com or download the free mobile app today. On to the interview. Welcome back to the Someday List podcast. I'm your host, Evan Leon. Today we're sitting down with Gabriella Pelko, someone who wears a lot of hats, and that's something we'll get into. So you're based out of Valdez, Alaska. For those of us in the lower 48 or the rest of the world, what is the weather like in Valdez this time of year?
Well, right now it's snowing outside, and I think if I read correctly this morning, this is the snowiest February we've had in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So there's probably like 5 or 6 feet of snow on the ground right now. Kind of snowpocalypse happened over the last couple weeks, which was incredible. And actually, that's kind of how this town is supposed to be. Technically, it's the snowiest city in North America. So it's snowing, and it's usually pretty gray or cold this time of year, but that's, I guess, why we live here.
So, like I said, you do wear a lot of hats: photographer, writer, environmentalist, radio broadcaster. Stop me if I'm missing anything. Adventure athlete, heli-skier / emergency worker. Does that about cover it?
I don't know if I would add on the last two. I've
Okay.
dabbled in those arenas, but yes, definitely wear a lot of hats, and that's kind of how I've always been. And this place kind of suits that nature of work, being able to work on and utilize a lot of different facets of yourself, at least for me.
And it's probably a limitation of our narrow American understanding of the nature of work. But I've always been curious, how do you personally answer the question, what do you do?
Usually I laugh just like I just did. And then, I mean, the nature of my work has changed quite a bit over the last few months, but I usually lead off with whatever my like predominant job is with the beginning, and that has changed a little bit, but usually I start off with like whoever is actually really paying my bills. That's what I say, I do.
Yeah.
And then I kind of follow up with all the other things that I do. But I guess now, like, that catch all, like, I kind of just um I do consider myself a creative, and then I was predominantly working in public radio for the last 4 years, and then made a little bit of a transition out of that, and am working for a company doing most of their sustainability work and marketing and communications, which has been great because it's just fully remote. Whereas at the radio station, which was not totally different, I guess, still communications and all those kinds of things, but having to be at work at 6 in the morning
Yeah.
every weekday. And it's a little different. So I've been leaning into the being able to sit on my laptop, get my work done, and be remote lately, which I've enjoyed, because then it kind of also lends itself to the other hats that I wear and gives me a little more flexibility to balance everything, which is nice.
Mhm. So this is probably a perfect transition. You went to school at Colorado College to study environmental policy. Is that something you had gone there knowing you wanted to do, or is that something you landed on while you were there?
Have always had an interest in the environmental realm. I guess, like, in high school, I was like president of the environmental club, but I went with a pretty open mind. I knew I wanted liberal arts education, because that's kind of exactly who I am. So, I want a little bit of everything, and
Hmm.
one of those well-rounded types, I suppose. But then I took a couple different courses, and yeah, as soon as I landed in my first environmental policy course, I just lit up and knew that it was exactly what I wanted to do. And I went and declared my major a week later. I was super inspired.
If someone's going through that program right now, are there any classes or professors you'd absolutely recommend?
Well, unfortunately, I would say that you have to start out with Phil Cannon, who was the professor of the first course that I took there. He ended up being my thesis advisor, but he passed away a few years ago, which is a huge bummer.
Oh,
But
yeah.
he was kind of the perfect person and the perfect intro to that world, because the reason I fell so in love with that course is it was just kind of a no nonsense way to combat what feels like the world's biggest problems. And there
Hmm.
was no fluff, there was no hope and inspiration or whatever. It was like, no, if you would like to create solutions to these global problems, here's the answers. This is how you do it. And you don't really see a lot of that out there. I think everyone kind of has their idea of how they're going to, teach solutions and come up with
Hmm.
things and hope and change and inspiring. But for me, his courses really resonated in that they were just like totally no nonsense, and like I found that really inspiring. But all the professors in that department were pretty amazing. So I don't know, the whole it's an experience in of itself.
After graduating college, you did kind of put your career on hold to move home and help care for your father who was battling ALS. And I've been reading through your writing, and you write about it very candidly and almost in like a visceral way, from a perspective that we don't often hear, which is that of a family member and a caregiver. While you're reflecting on that, obviously that can be helpful in one's grieving process. But I think an unintended consequence of that is also helping other people heal. Was that intentional in your writing about it, or was that just you working through it?
No, I think I kind of discovered my writing voice through that
Hmm.
process. And really, it all started because when he first got sick and diagnosed, we were suddenly being bombarded by texts, calls, emails, people stopping by. Everybody wanted to know what was happening, how he was doing, what's the update, what's the plan.
Hmm.
And we just had no idea. Like, it was just it was exhausting enough dealing with the process of what's going on, but then just as exhausting trying to keep everybody who loves and cares about you, which is very nice, up to date.
Hmm.
So we ended up starting just a blog, and me being a little creative kind of took it over. And I don't know, I've always been a pretty heart open person. So, but at first it was really just for our immediate friends and family and neighbors, to let everybody know what was going on in a small newsletter form. And then he ended up being sick for almost 5 years. And throughout that time, we ended up kind of growing a network of fellow patients with ALS, caregivers, other families that had been impacted, and then people that just, near and far friends and family that were following along. And I tried my best to just be really honest and open. Like, that's usually, I don't know. I don't. I. It's funny, as I get older, I can notice myself becoming a little more like closed off and sharing that well. But in the
Hmm.
moment, it was just so raw and real, and I think I was so emotionally charged almost all the time that that was really the outlet for that, and to share like the real reality of what we were going through. And it did resonate with a lot of people, and I think that ended up, like your original question, it was never really the intention to like relate to other people. But then as soon as you kind of spend some time in that world of ALS, um, you find people that have gone through that same unique, that's a little bit of an oxymoron, but it's a rare disease. So not a ton of people go through that, but when you find the ones that do, you do relate pretty well. And it's very important because in my own friend group or neighbor group or family group, I felt very alone in my experience of what we were going through. But then the power of the internet lets you connect with people from anywhere who can relate. So, and I thought that was really powerful. And honestly, I feel like that was such a gift to be able to do that. And I've been thinking that in the future slash the now, what I'm more interested now in sharing the healing process and how I've chosen to live after something like that.
Your writing is super powerful in that way, and that does really come through, and it's always really struck me about it. Your father was obviously an important figure in your life. He taught you to ski. You call him your superhero, and now he's kind of part of your superhero origin story. I'm curious about what things about yourself that you clearly flag as, oh, yep, I get that from dad, or if there are any things that are distinctly different.
We're stubborn.
Okay.
Or maybe just determined. But no, I think he was very much a leadership figure, kind of um, big hearted, wanted to befriend everybody, make sure everybody was doing well. Like, how can you make a difference for people coming in after you, kind of thing. And I definitely have a lot of those characteristics. And then, I mean, there's also his harder traits to deal with, like being really stubborn or really, passionate about what you're doing at the time, which then if you can't do that, it makes it really hard to, it's like, the things that you identify with, once
Hmm.
those get taken away, what's kind of left. So, um, distinct differences. I think I'm a little more into the mindfulness and spirituality of things. And I've really tried to take therapy very seriously and mental health very, very seriously. And not to say that he didn't, but I think generationally, that's a little bit of a difference, that I know that if I can focus on those things and have that foundation really solid, then whatever else comes after that should be pretty doable.
It's really moving how you continue to tell his story and embody his legacy and spirit. But in the immediate aftermath, after your father had passed, you're going to try and re enter the workforce, do the 9 to 5 thing. Were you just trying to get into a routine, or was that really kind of the point of reevaluation?
So that was really challenging because in college, I kind of had this idea of what I would do. And I was so passionate about environmental policy. And I worked all these internships, a lot in like the legal worlds, because I thought environmental law might have been a path for me. And then I worked in sustainability, thought I was going to kind of go down that path. And then spent really 2 years away from the professional workforce, being a caregiver and working with my parents and living with my
Hmm.
parents. It was like the complete derailment. So then all of a sudden, when he passed away, it was kind of like, okay, now what? I'm a little bit behind my peers. I'll just find an entry level something that's somewhat related. I knew I mostly chose my work based off where I knew I wanted to live. I was going to move back in with my boyfriend at the time. And yeah, I got a job that was somewhat related to what I wanted to do. And I thought structure and routine would be really good for me. But I couldn't do it. Like I really, my soul and my heart and my body, everything was just rejecting where I was and what I was doing. It was just too much of an energy and a momentum to be contained and suppressed, which was scary because am I now writing myself out of the workforce? I already feel like I'm delayed. What am I doing with my life? All those kinds of things. And then I'm not usually much of a quitter either. Like, I think, again, it comes back to being a little stubborn. It's like, well, I got this job, I should follow through with it. But it was like I had to listen to all of my signals telling me you needed a big change. So I quit my job, had no idea what my plan was, like, had no plan, not sure how I'm going to make money, don't know what I'm going to do, don't know what to do with my life. I feel like I can barely function because I was really grieving pretty hard. And my mom flew out to Colorado to spend a week with me over Christmas, right about where I quit. And we were sitting in my favorite tequila bar having margaritas, fresh squeezed margaritas from my favorite bartenders who were there for me throughout this whole like process. They were some of my very good friends. And that's where I heard about a 3-month opportunity in Valdez, Alaska. And I was like, perfect. I've always wanted to go to Alaska. I've always wanted to see it. 3 months, I can work in the ski industry. It'll be fun. I'll see Alaska. That just sounds like exactly what I need right now. And then here we are.
How long did it take you to make that realization while you were in the workforce reassessing?
It was weeks. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It did not last very long. And I felt pretty bad. Obviously, it's like, you go through the hiring process and, they hire you for a reason. And I liked the people I was working with and was really trying to make it work and kind of thought there was like, oh, there's something wrong with me if I can't just stick this out. But yeah, the cues from everything inside myself were way too strong to ignore. So I just went with it.
The last couple of years have kind of reframed for a lot of people what is and isn't attainable or even important. And you've already touched on some of the things that drew you to Valdez, but I'm curious, what is some of the mental math? Like, were there practical considerations you were making along the way before you made that jump?
There was nothing practical about it. Like, my mom cried for a month when I made my decision. I mean, the whole thing was impractical. Like, I knew nobody here. I have no family here. Had this seasonal job lined up that actually didn't even really work out for the full 3 months, and I moved onto a sailboat. Like, there was literally nothing practical about the whole thing, but I think that's what I needed. It was just like I think the past 5 years of my life had been so heavy, and really they were, I guess, unpredictable, and it felt like life had been choosing my path a little bit for me, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, I'm just going to make things up as I go now, because I used to try to plan everything, and then you realize a lot of times your plans just evaporate into thin air, or they get set on fire, or
Mhm.
completely eviscerated. And so I was like, screw it, I'm not going to make any plans, I'm just going to kind of make things up as I go along, and I'm feeling up for that challenge. So that's it, just felt right, so that's what I did.
I'm going to ask you about both, but can I ask what the soul crushing 9 to 5 job was before you made the leap is, and what was the one where you landed in Valdez?
Sure. And it wasn't, I feel bad. It was like, had nothing to do with the people or the job, but I was just working as an administrative assistant for the town that I was in, their Parks and Rec department. Public service has always kind of been my MO. And yeah, they were hiring, and I got to make posters and stuff and do some
Yeah.
photos and whatever. And then the 3 month job that landed me in Alaska was for a heli ski operation, which I was also kind of doing admin office stuff, but it got me outside, and it got me up here, and I got to heli ski a few days and meet a bunch of amazing people. And then when that ended, I didn't know what I was going to do, but I wasn't really worried about it at all. I just kind of had this innate trust and faith that something would work out. And I think I went 1 week without a job before I walked into a coffee shop in town, which there's only three. And I was ordering my coffee, and the woman behind me goes, "I love your voice. Do you listen to public radio?" And I was like, uh, "Thank you." And then I was like, "Yeah, actually, kind of born and bred on NPR." And she was like,
Mhm.
"I'm Karen Allred. I am the morning host at KCHU, the local station here. I'm leaving in 2 months, and I need a replacement. If you want a
Wow.
job, bring your resume in tomorrow at 6 a.m. and we'll see if this is a good fit for you." And I was like, oh, like, okay,
Serendipitous, yeah.
totally. Yeah. So that was kind of the three job jump to where I landed at the radio station, which I had worked at for the last pretty much 4 years.
This interview is brought to you by To Do. You're juggling a lot and you don't know where to start. We've all been there. And that's why we made To Do with the core belief that less is more. To Do is the minimalist to-do list app to ease your cognitive burdens. We are the most refreshing task manager in a sea of monster energy drinks. No pings, no feeds, no comments, just you and the things you need to get done in a simple, intuitive interface. Use code SomedayList for 20% off when you subscribe at TEUXDEUX.com. Back to the interview. Okay, I do have a couple follow-up questions on that.
Yeah.
So I was reading through your Gordini profile, and one of your career highlights that you listed, and I quote, "Getting dropped on top of the books for my rookie shakedown, my first time heli skiing in Alaska." Now, I have no concept of the outdoors. I don't know what that sequence of words means together, but it sounds really cool. Can you tell me a little bit about the type of skiing you were doing there, and you do just generally?
Yeah, it's funny you read that sentence out loud, and I'm like, yeah, that actually probably doesn't make a lot of sense to to most people. It sounds like code word, but that was at the very when I first got here, and I was working for that one outfitter. There were only two of us that were new to the operation this year, and so the owner did what you would call a rookie shakedown. So we were the two rookies, I guess, on the team, and we flew in the helicopter. He put us on top of a pretty steep run, which is this just classic area of skiing in Thompson Pass. It's called the Books. It's very notorious. You see it in my photos all the time. It's so scenic and it looks like the gates of heaven, really. It's like this
Hmm.
just gorgeous bowl. But yeah, he put us on top of there and was like, okay, here we go. And then we skied that. And it was, oh, I was terrified at first, but it was probably still one of the best ski runs of my entire life. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. And that was, my first introduction. That was the first time I ever skied in Alaska, was up there. So that was pretty cool. And I was pretty hooked from there
Yeah.
on out.
So you were discovered in a coffee shop. But, did you have any broadcasting experience going into this?
None. Nope.
And what was that learning curve like?
It was pretty terrifying because you have to learn by going on air. So this, just like anybody, the sound of my own voice freaked me out, hearing it, recording for the first time. But luckily, my mentor and Karen, who trained me, was so patient, and she was probably the best person that I ever could have had to onboard me. And she walked me through all my mistakes. She knew that, that discomfort of hearing your own voice on air. And she's like, you'll get used to it. Everybody gets used to it. And everybody's so glad that you're here, and everybody knows you're training. So, they're just happy to hear your voice and that you're learning. And she just was so tender walking me through that process. But a lot of it really just came from her kind of working the board and then letting me go on air. And I used to read like word for word the script and the news stories and everything. And I was so, jumpy and jumbly, and I'd
Hmm.
mispronounce things, and I'd apologize all the time, which you're never supposed to do. It's like being on stage or acting. You're just supposed to make it up and showbiz and and go along with it. But then, like 4 years later, it's like I'm kind of sitting back, and it's like I know exactly the timing and the moods, and I improvise all my words, and I have all the scripts memorized, and I'm so much more comfortable on
Yeah.
air. But at first, the imposter syndrome was, I mean, through the roof. I was like, I don't even have like a journalism background, really. Like I
Hmm.
just, but I had listened to NPR forever, and I don't know, it's kind of like I did end up finding my voice there. So I was very grateful for that opportunity, and it really opened my eyes into the broader communications world, and trying to hone my skills in that area.
So I think you said you were going on every morning at 6 a.m. How condensed is that process every morning? Like, what did that look like for a show to come together or a broadcast to come together?
Sure. So you show up and you make coffee. That's the first.
Okay.
That's my first step to all of this process. So much coffee, and then the first broadcast is actually on at 6:50 a.m. or 6:49 in 30 seconds. But the process leading up to that is kind of like going through all the stories for the day and what news is fresh, and then you pretty much are reading through all the news, the weather, looking through all the other little tidbits that we broadcast, assembling what the next six broadcasts are going to look like. So it's just a lot of curating what's going to be on broadcast for the day, and then by the time you're ready to broadcast at 6:50, that was like a 10-minute one, and then there's like a 3-minute, a 4-minute, a 2-minute, a 10-minute, and then a 3-minute, and then there's a 30-minute midday broadcast. So I really enjoyed it. I've always been kind of a news junkie, so it's like, oh, it's my job to sit here and like read through the news, and then picking what gets aired and how you're going to present it, and like what order and what music you're then going to play that transitions you out of that story. So like, what was the sentiment there, and how does it connect with the next thing you're going to talk about? And then like, the weather
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a cool process.
As someone who always has NPR on in the car, endlessly envious and jealous of that. All the while, you're taking photographs the whole time of this beautiful Alaskan landscape. When did you first pick up the camera?
Good question. I think I've always had a hankering towards photography, but I was a little shy slash embarrassed about it. I think in high school, I was always more. I used to be a little more into music. I played music for a long time, and then I went more the athletic road. So it was kind of like focused on athletics and then really focused on academics. And I felt a little embarrassed about being artsy. I was like, I don't do art. I'm not an artist. I'm not any of that, but I have my little photos here and there. And I liked setting things up and trying to capture and share that stuff. But then in kind of towards the end of college, I believe my brother had purchased just a super basic Nikon DSLR, and he used it for a few years and then he left it at home and I stole it right off the shelf and just started tinkering with it. And yeah, just whenever I would go on adventures, try to shoot things and I don't know, just have fun with it. And like Instagram has really only been the place where I'd put photos and, I just was only ever followed by friends and family and stuff. But I liked taking beautiful photos of the places that I would go. And then when I got here, or actually before I even got here several years ago, I remember when I did encounter my brother and he had known that I had stolen this camera off his shelf. He wasn't too bothered, but he saw that I was shooting in the automatic and he was like, okay, if you're actually going to use this, you need to learn how to shoot manual. And I was like, I don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
So I just went on Google and then I was really bad at it for a while, but just played around with it and tried to figure it out myself and have developed my eye or whatever you want to call it over the years. And then I got here and I mean, it's just the most magical, beautiful, dramatic, different scene bombarding place I've ever seen. So it does lend itself to taking pretty good photographs. But I also feel like I am a little more spiritually, emotionally connected to this place. It's really easy to just walk outside and be like, click, and get this whole landscape or whatever. But I try to like capture the little moods or moments that I see in my day to day of this place. And it really has become my favorite form of communication. I love it.
Your work is what I can only describe as otherworldly. I think I've said this to you before. It's like a default Mac OS background. Like that's how beautiful these photographs are. It wouldn't look out of place in like a National Geographic. I'm curious when you are going out on these, I don't know if expeditions or trips or outings is what the correct terminology is, but is it like a whole lot of extra weight? Does it go out with you every time you're going out there?
Not every time, but most of the time. I know a lot of professional photographers have much smaller setups and cameras that they'll bring on expeditions or ski tours or even just day trips. Because weight is definitely, it's funny. It's like everything's supposed to be like ultra light and, shedding weight's really important. I have this massive camera and I like the zoom lens. That's kind of my niche right there. And so it's even bigger. But to me, it's usually worth the extra weight. So it depends if I know like the shooting conditions are going to be good, then I'll bring it. But yeah, it's almost always with me. And especially like if I'm not just, packing things in on a backpack, if I'm on the boat or just going on a day hike or something too, then yeah, it's almost always with me. And I find that I regret not having it, more than I
Mhm.
regret having it. And the iPhone obviously takes great photos, but it's just totally, totally different.
Do you subscribe to the, strictly Nikon or Canon or what are you shooting on now?
I took whatever was free.
Oh,
I
okay.
I did. That's just what I ended up with because that's what my brother had left behind at my parents' house. And then I actually busted it in November. I had gotten in a helicopter for what was literally the most scenic sunset, maybe of my life, but definitely of the year last year. I took a bunch of videos of it. So because my camera had broken like 3 photos in, I was
Oh
just like,
no.
"Oh my god, like, this is so just classic." So, since then, I've been borrowing my boyfriend's Canon, so this is my first time using a Canon, and, once I have a little bit more budget to replace it, I've even been looking at Sony, so I'm not super loyal to any of the above, it's mostly just been what's wound up in my hands.
I think that's a good way to approach it. Um, you have done campaigns for the Sierra Club, Fjallraven. I had to look up how to pronounce that. Patagonia, I think, as well. How much planning goes into these campaigns that you do?
So those are all like totally different. With the Sierra Club, that was more of like, just probably a few months of preparation. That was for like a local Valdez climate, I don't want to say rally. It wasn't much of a rally. It was more of like a meetup, but like 50 people showed up. and that was a few weeks of preparation. And then the Fjallraven and the Patagonia Snow were both other photographers, other creators, other campaigns that I just got asked to be in front of the camera for, which was really fun. Especially Fjallraven, I got to go to Iceland, which I enjoyed tremendously. And that one was probably, they asked me 2 or 3 weeks before. And I didn't
Wow.
have to do much for that. I just kind of showed up and went hiking and really had a great time doing it.
Yeah.
um, and then the Patagonia Snow was a friend, a photographer friend who was shooting for them. And I mostly just, yeah, it was kind of fun doing like the logistics of trying to figure out like where to go and what light is good. And the conditions were really terrible, but that's all just kind of like day to day planning of how that's all going to come together.
Are there any dream clients you would love to work with that maybe we can help you manifest into the universe?
Oh gosh. I should probably have a list of dream clients, but I feel pretty content with my setup as it is for now. And then
Hmm.
I'm it's funny, I just am keeping myself really open to seeing how my own career evolves, and I'm trying not to like iron hand anything or have any sort of wild expectations. That's how my whole Valdez experience unfolded and transpired. And being here was anything beyond my wildest dreams. So I'm like, why would I limit myself to, why don't I just see what happens? It's not to say they don't have a few goals and things, but yeah, I don't think I have any like super specific dream clients or anything. I think it'd be cool to work with National Geographic someday.
Hmm.
And I follow a lot of photographers from them and whatnot, but um, I don't know. We'll see.
I think when people carve a non-traditional career path, the default is almost to dismiss it as lacking direction or being easygoing. But I think it almost requires a higher degree of diligence and organization. What kind of planner are you? Like, how do you stay organized day to day between all the hats that you wear or have worn?
Yeah. I totally agree. It's really funny. It's like my boyfriend has one job and it's like this
Hmm.
is where he goes to work and then he comes home and that's that. And I'm like we had dinner with some of his coworkers the other day and he was like, "Yeah, she wears all the hats and she's extremely hyper organized and I don't know how she does it. Like we're just totally different in that way." And I agree like you have to be kind of on top of your game and be flexible and also be open and all those kinds of things and have that sense of drive. So because I'm working for I have like an actual employer and then I hustle like other creative freelance work and then like my photography and sometimes at the radio station and then like the oil spill response thing, which is I think what you were you were getting at the beginning of the conversation. Like all the little things I do, I make sure my calendar, like I use iCalendar pretty religiously, but for the most part, I have the notes app, a pinned note that I organize like pretty much a 10-day outlook. And I will manually take everything for the next 10 days, put it in like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday kind of breakdown
Hmm.
with the little check mark bubbles next to everything. So, I put like 8 a.m., 10 a.m., this, and then like whatever I'm actually going to try to get in throughout the day, grocery shopping or go to the boat or like whatever else needs to be done, or even like the fun things so that every day I can like actually just go to that more detailed, expanded note that has everything I know how my day is going to kind of go. And then I get that whole week outlook and then I check it off. And then that way, because I'm also like I work in Slack, I work in, Google Drive. I'm using all these different like organizing platforms, but that one hosts every single thing I'm doing and it helps me stay on top of everything.
I think it is cool that your journey to Valdez and your time there seems like a deviation from your college degree, and that you have kind of worked your way full circle back into working in sustainability.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about the work you're doing now?
Yeah. So this is my first time working in like the product manufacturing world in sustainability. And I'm helping this company who's really interested in making like all their products very circular and wanting the business to be as sustainable as possible and like doing it, without the greenwashing, but doing it like really the right way. So I'm helping them source like renewable energy for factory production we were trying to create an entire like recycling program for all the products to be able to be sent back, broken apart, and then recycled into new products, like all in house pretty much.
Hmm.
And then like a whole materials database, trying to make all the materials that are going into all the different products environmentally preferred materials, and then things like offsetting shipments so that those are carbon neutral, and then like eventually kind of moving towards that carbon neutrality, but trying to do all the like the nitty gritty things that really matter in all the different facets of the manufacturing and product world, rather than just being like, we're just buying this many trees in India to offset our,
Yeah.
so that's been really cool. And it has kind of come full circle into getting back into that world. And I really enjoyed that. And it's cool because I was just doing sustainability consulting for them at first. And then after working for them for like a year, they hired me to do more of the media and communication stuff too. So I get to use all those hats.
That's great. Congratulations.
No, thanks.
On the Gordini profile, you mentioned another couple of projects you were working on, one being the Black Crows documentary, which is out now, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about the other projects you have coming up?
Yeah. And so that one's out. And then it's kind of funny. This has been like my great year of cancellations, which, it's like, how do you flip it? I'm like, well, it's opportunity for something new or whatever. Was actually supposed to be on a plane in 2 days to go do a project that I'm really excited about, which is another short film, but a little more abstract and like weird, and skiing and spirituality and your feelings and taking the masks off and who really are you and those kinds of things.
Hmm.
So unfortunately there's not enough snow to make that one happen in the location we were supposed to shoot that in, so I was a little bummed about that, but room for other things going on. But I'm trying to actually pour more time and effort into my own photography projects this year. I had like a little print shop set up for a while, but I'm trying to like really revamp that and do it a little bit differently. And then ideally, I'm hoping to be working on a photo book that also has snippets of writing in it as well. So that's yeah, kind of like, well, if all these other things for other people aren't working out, like more time and energy I can pour into really my own things. So starting off with like the prints and doing a little bit more of that, and then yeah, hopefully just assembling at least the baby seedlings of what is my dream book for right now.
I will be one of the first orders
I know
of
you're
that
always so
book.
supportive.
Can you tell the listeners where we can find your work online?
Sure. It's just my name, GabrielaPalco.com. And a lot of people know me as Gabby. That's usually what I go by. But yeah, right there. And then I'll have an email subscription link there sometime soon too, because right now most of my audience is on Instagram. It's there too. Gabby Palco is my Instagram handle. But I think, yeah, starting an email newsletter and having a little bit more like original long form content, and writing and photos, there is what I'm going to try to move towards. So yeah, those two places.
I will put all those links in the show notes for you as well.
Thanks.
Gabby, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me this morning.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Evan. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning into another episode of Someday List. We'll have new interviews for you every month, so make sure to follow and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or follow along on social media at To-Do App on Instagram or at To-Do on Twitter. This podcast is produced by To-Do. Our theme music is composed by Evan Laybourne. I want to thank our guest Gabby Palco for coming on again, and of course thank you, the listener. We'll catch you next time.